Hi, it's Dr. Greg Jantz. Hope and possibility. How do I bounce back? How do I get my resilience back? How do I come out of this post-pandemic growth? How to do that? How to be stronger emotionally? The keys to resilience. Let's talk about it next.
Dr. Gregory Jantz is a best-selling author of over 45 books and the founder of the Center A Place of Hope, voted a top 10 center for depression treatment in the U.S. As the pioneer of whole person care, Dr. Jantz is known as the messenger of hope. Now the nation's expert on anxiety, depression, substance abuse, relationships, trauma, and PTSD, here is Dr. Gregory Jantz.
Okay, it's Dr. Greg Jantz, counselor and mental health expert. Just finished recently my 45th book on trauma. And Triumph Over Trauma is the title. Love the word triumph because we need to triumph over and have emotional victories, have spiritual victories, have physical victories. This is a time to move. I'm calling it post-pandemic growth because, during the pandemic, people were going to emergency rooms and we were calling this, the new term was COVID psychosis. People became saturated with anxiety, chronic stress, depression, maybe some addiction issues crept in there, and then all of a sudden, we start to break from reality. And this is what oppressive anxiety can do. It can cause you to have a reality break. You kind of got one foot in and one foot out. So what we're seeing post-pandemic, and I hope we can say post-pandemic, it seems like some would like the pandemic just to keep going. That's another topic. But as we look at, okay, now, how do I keep myself emotionally well? How do I keep growing? And number one, we've got to build resilience. Resistance and resilience. Resilience, what's that look like? I made some notes today as we talk about building a system of personal hope. What is personal hope? How do you build a system of personal hope? Exactly. Here's what you do. You've got to have a plan. When we have a plan, we can start to build hope. One is a personal renewal plan. Now, there's 7 factors of those that develop what I'm going to call the R factor, the resilience factor. 7 factors of a big R, resilience. Number 1 is we have to always deal with toxic pain in our life. Toxic pain, what is that? Toxic pain comes in many forms. It comes in the form of unresolved anger, unresolved hurt, bitterness, resentments. It's the poison of resentment and unforgiveness that can really be something that penetrates our whole life. Toxic hurt and emotions has a ripple effect, and it will affect everything. Our relationships, it will affect everything about how we see ourselves, our relationship, how we see God. Is God a loving God? God hates me. It'll affect everything. Now, toxic emotions. Think of the word anger. Another word for that could be hurt. And then think about the next toxic emotion has got to be fear. Lots of forms of fear. There's worry. Worry is that mental process. I just keep saying, what if, what if, what if? And I get myself worked up and all those what ifs. The what ifs, what if I didn't wear the right thing? What if I didn't say the right thing? What if they didn't like me? What if I'm going to be fired? The what ifs lay the groundwork to develop anxiety. Anxiety, if you have anxiety, always a physical component to anxiety. I get sweaty palms, my heart rate goes up, it affects my sleep stages, I wake up during the night. Anxiety has a physical side to it. And that's why in the book I wrote The Anxiety Reset. If you're going to have success in dealing with anxiety, you've got to address physical issues that are going on as well, like low thyroid, like hormonal issues that are contributing factors to high levels of anxiety. That said, okay, we want to talk about resilience, and we've got to deal with these toxic emotions. This is all number 1. This is number 1. Anger is number 1, or hurt, and still a part of number 1, the toxic emotion of fear, and I talked about anxiety. Third one is guilt or shame. Shamefulness. Shame is a sense that something's wrong with me. I'm defective. I will always be this way. There's nothing that can be done about it. That is shame. So as we look towards healing from shame, what are we looking for? We're looking for receiving really a new identity or a true identity. Now, my faith is one that says my identity comes through who God designed me to be. Others may have a different point of view with that. But I'm going to say that I've got to resolve with shame, because it affects my sense of self and who I am. I have to resolve shame or any sense of I'm defective, I'll never be good enough. All right, that's our number one. Resilience. You cannot have toxic emotions of hurt and anger and fear and shame. Those three toxic emotions all mixed together will rob you of being resilient, because you're not resilient emotionally. All right. Then we also know that, by the way, one of the ways we get toxic emotions that I made a notation here is trauma. A traumatic event not dealt with in our life. Emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, significant loss, breakup of a home or family that has left a trauma scar. And you feel that, and then you develop these toxic emotions as a result of those traumas. All right, number two, I can be more resilient if I understand the three basic human needs. Three basic human needs. Number one, the need to be understood. We all have this. In relationships, we need to feel understood. All right? This is a basic human need. That's to be listened to, not just heard, to be understood. We also, number two, related to this, is to be affirmed. To be affirmed says, I know I have value as a human being. I'm affirmed. I'm affirmed by others. I feel a sense of value. And then there's to be accepted. The three basic human needs. This actually comes from research on what are the basic human needs, and if these are not met, what happens. And I'll share with you that. And now, accepted means I know that I'm loved, I have a sense of acceptance from somebody. Now, these three, understood, accepted, and affirmed, if they're not met, and this research shows the range I gave, 13, 14, 15, 16, there was a range to 13 to 17. If these needs are not met in a human being's life, they're actually then a predictor to later starting an addiction. So, not met in childhood, we become likely compulsive. All right, number two, here's what we need to look at for resilience. You have to be a practitioner of forgiveness, an initiator of forgiveness. Now, self-forgiveness, a lot of people victimize themselves by still punishing yourself for something that you did when you were 13. The whole area of forgiveness has to be addressed. What does that look like? Well, it may look like an abuser that abused you, and now you've got to figure out, I have to learn how to forgive. I have to learn, what do I do with that? Do I carry that around? Am I angry, hurt, and resentful my whole life? Or do I set myself free? Forgiveness gets confused. It's not for the other person. It's not for those that were doing the abuse or whatever they did, the offense. Forgiveness is for our well-being. All right? So, initiator of forgiveness. Here's how to know if you're in trouble with this one. If you're easy to take up an offense. You're just easy. There's somebody says something, or you think they look at you wrong, and you are quick to take up an offense, then absolutely we know that you probably are struggling with some hurt and resentment. And if you find that you're quick to blame, so take up an offense, quick to blame, have that spirit of blame where you're just blaming everybody for everything. And that's what happens. Just never taking responsibility, just keep blaming. That is an indicator of a need for learning forgiveness. So, when I say initiator of forgiveness, what are we saying? Well, what we're saying is, I need to be the one, when I realize there needs to be forgiveness, whether it's for myself or others. A healthy person is the one that initiates that process. Now, there's some people who have been abused, and we should not go to the abuser and say, I forgive you. That can be unwise and too dangerous. But we can look at, what do I need to do in my life to have freedom from the poison of unforgiveness. Remember, that's where you get 3 toxic emotions. Hurt, anger is all one. Fear and anxiety, that's one. And then shame, false guilt and shame. All right. A couple things to think about there. I know many books have been written on forgiveness. Oh my goodness. Have they ever? And it's not a topic we go, oh, I've heard all of it about forgiveness. I just want you to consider for your own emotional well-being, what do I have to do to create a system of forgiveness in my life where I'm an active forgiver? We love to be around forgiving people. They develop optimism, they're optimistic, they're grateful people. You go, wow, that's a trustworthy person. I love being around them. All right, number 3. And this is our third and final of the 3 factors that I want to cover right now on how to build resilience. See, it's not about what you go out and do. It's about internal change inside that will make me more emotionally resilient, which will give me more energy, improve my sleep. Remember, I used to work in sleep research. A resentful person doesn't sleep well. It affects everything. All right. Now, you have to be, number 3, I wrote down freedom from addictions or compulsive behaviors. So what we noticed during, and why I said post-pandemic, during the pandemic, the Alcoholic Beverage Association said that we had 8 weeks where there was selling $1 billion of beer, just beer. What in the world? How do you sell that much beer? That's a lot of money. People were escaping through drinking. And that's one of the things that when we have traumatic events, we look for a way to cope, we look for a way to self-medicate, and we start an addiction. I'll tell you, the folks that were working from home that we have worked with here at the Center, A Place of Hope, we see that they have started drinking at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and they're working away virtually, right? And then 2 or 3 months pass, now I'm drinking at 1 in the afternoon and trying to function. My employer doesn't know it. Oh, I'm getting my work done. We make a lot of excuses, a lot of reasons for doing that, right? And then what happens? We keep doing it. We make excuses to continue the behavior, but we keep doing it, and we've developed an addiction. All right, that could be, and I just used alcohol. Could be food, could be digital, could be pornography. I wrote down cannabis, could be opiate, pain pill addiction, fentanyl, etc., which is a whole nother topic. All right, now, we know that you've got to move on from addictions and from, if we're going to be resilient. Think about it this way. Resilience comes when I'm emotionally strong, not dependent upon a substance. If you probably noticed that, let's just use alcohol. Alcohol lowers it's a depressant for your central nervous system. It lowers your bounce back. You don't feel good. Your brain feels foggy. And you say, man, that was a lot of fun. But you're toxic. You're toxic physically. And we know that you just do not feel like bouncing back. It does not work. All right. There you go. We know there's hope when we begin to apply principles that will work. So I've got to get forgiveness going in my life, become an initiator of forgiveness. I cannot have toxic emotional pain if I've got to walk through some tough times and do some things. Yay, I have to do it to be well. And finally, I cannot rely on addiction. Even a food addiction. We cannot be engaged in compulsive behavior and feel a sense of resilience. Resilience, I feel emotionally strong. Resilience, I feel healthy in my relationships. I speak truth. I'm not going about with vengefulness, and I will feel that I can trust people and engage in relationships. And I begin to see some of the gifts and talents that God made me because I'm resilient and I can do, and I'm called, my belief is, I'm called to do and be, and there's a reason for my life. Okay, just some initial thoughts here on part 1 of resilience and how to get your bounce back. Yeah, we got to look at some internal things first. All right, good to be with you. And I really do know there's hope post-pandemic. I know there's growth, and I know there's healing because we see it in the lives of the folks that we work with. You got to look at the whole person, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and break it all down, because that's where we get sustainable, long-term growth. And it's about moving from a growth or from a stuck mindset to what's been referred to as a growth mindset. That's what it's all about.